Coming up on this Tuesday edition of Newsline at noon, marking her first year in office, President Park lays out the details of her 3-year economic innovation plan in a televised address. Samsung unveils its latest Galaxy phone, the 5S, and wearable devices at the Mobile World Congress in Barcelona. The 5S phone features a bigger screen and a fingerprint scanner, enabling people to shop with PayPal. Plus, Ukraine's new leaders urgently seek Western aid to make up for the loss of a bailout deal with Moscow as Russia steps up its rhetoric against the legitimacy of the interim government. These stories and more on Newsline at noon. Thanks for joining us. You're watching Newsline at noon. I'm Cheong in Seoul.
Very good to have you with us. I'm Mark Broom. Today, February 25th, marks the first anniversary of President Park's inauguration. In a televised address to the nation that wrapped up about an hour ago, the president laid out details of her previously pledged 3-year economic innovation plan.
And to give us the details of what was included in her plan, we now connect live to our presidential correspondent, Eoh Jin-joo, at the presidential office of Cheong Wa Dae. So, Jin-joo, what were some of the goals President Park put forth this morning?
President Park first vowed to raise the nation's potential growth rate to above 4% by the year 2017 through her economic reform plan. Now, the president unveiled 3 key goals of this plan. Those are an economy with strong fundamentals, and an innovative and dynamic economy, and an economy that balances domestic demand and exports. The president says she will start by rooting out abnormal policies and wrong practices, especially in the public sector, that have been overlooked in past administrations. Abnormal practices include lax management, high debt levels, and all sorts of corruption. President Park pledged to reduce and cap the debt ratio of public institutions at 200%, which is the upper limit for private companies to issue corporate bonds. The Korea Land and Housing Corporation, for example, which has debts of more than $128 billion, had a debt ratio of over 400% as of last year. The president also laid out measures to protect employees and restore fairness in the economy. She promised to reduce the income gap between permanent and temporary workers and strengthen the requirements for layouts. The president vowed to gradually expand the unemployment insurance to cover owner-operators, artists, and day-to-day workers.
So, Jin-joo, let's go over her pledge for an innovative and dynamic economy.
Yes, President Park's push for a so-called creative economy comes as an important part of her goal towards an innovative economy. Now, she pledged to invest a total of $3.7 billion to create a better business environment for the country's startups and venture firms over the next 3 years, and also increase investment in research and development to 5% of the country's GDP by the year 2017. The Korean government also aims to expand its free trade agreements with other countries to cover 70% of the entire world market. Currently, the FTAs Korea has with other countries cover about 55% of the world's GDP. Now, for a balanced economy, President Park emphasized the importance of boosting domestic demand. How? The president pointed to lowering the nation's mounting household debt and solving the skyrocketing jeonse prices, a lump sum payment for a long-term housing rental. She pledged to reduce the country's household debt ratio by 5 percentage points by 2017 by handing out tax benefits and introducing fixed interest rates and level debt services for mortgage loans. Another important key to boosting domestic demand, according to President Park, is job creation. Now, her plan includes creating 500,000 jobs for young people and 1.5 million jobs for women.
And Jin-joo, the president also unveiled plans to prepare for an era of a unified Korea.
Yes, the Park administration will set up a presidential reunification preparation committee to work towards a, quote, systematic and constructive reunification. Now, the committee will be in charge of preparing for a reunification on the Korean Peninsula and expanding inter-Korean exchanges and dialogues. Experts and civic groups in various sectors of foreign affairs, security, economy, and culture will be joining the committee to come up with a specific blueprint of a unified Korea. Now, following the address, President Park is presiding over an economic ministers meeting to discuss specific measures for her 3-year economic plan.
Okay, Jin-joo, thank you for that report. That was our presidential correspondent Eoh Jin-joo reporting on President Park's 3-year economic innovation plan that she laid out this morning.
The two Koreas have wrapped up their 2 rounds of reunions for war-separated families on this Tuesday at North Korea's Mount Kumgang. Nearly 500 divided family members said their final tearful farewells earlier this morning, and some 350 South Korean participants will return to the South at around 5 p.m. Korea time. The 6-day reunion event was the first in more than 3 years. In the first round, 82 South Koreans who applied for the event reunited with their families in the north, while 88 North Koreans met with their South Korean family members in the next round. The South's Defense Ministry, meanwhile, says a North Korean military patrol ship crossed the maritime border in the West Sea 3 times between just before 11 p.m. Monday night and 3 a.m. Tuesday morning.
The Japanese government is stepping up efforts to revise its imperialist past.
Following his chief cabinet secretary's suggestion of changing Tokyo's wartime sex slavery apology, Prime Minister Shinzo Abe reportedly showed intent to revise the so-called Kono statement. Our Kim Ji-yeon reports.
In a move certain to draw fury from Korea and the rest of Asia, Japan says it's looking into revising its landmark apology for its wartime system of sex slavery. The Kyodo News Agency reported Monday that Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe is mulling over revising the 1993 Kono statement after his chief cabinet secretary Yoshihide Suga said that evidence given by women forced to work in Japan's military brothels that forms the basis of the statement will be re-examined. In a recent poll by the Sankei Shimbun, 58.6% of respondents said Tokyo should revise the statement, while only 23.8% said it should not. In another move sure to inflame regional tensions, Japan's foreign ministry posted a video Monday criticizing Korea for causing, quote, unnecessary confusion by pressing other countries to adopt the name EC when referring to the body of water between Korea and Japan. The video says Sea of Japan has been the internationally established name for the waters since the end of the 18th century. Tokyo's move appears aimed at curbing state legislation in the U.S. that would require the use of both names in school textbooks after Virginia passed such a bill. Korea considers the name Sea of Japan a legacy of Japan's imperialistic past, as it came into use during Japan's colonial rule of Korea in the early 20th century. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
One of Korea's major unions and the railway union plan to stage a massive rally Tuesday to protest what they say is the government's oppression of workers and the privatization of public firms.
Son Jung-in reports.
The Union of the Korea Railroad Corporation launched a scheduled one-day protest Tuesday, despite stern warnings from the government to anyone participating in the rally. The union is demanding the state-run railway operator withdraw punishments against unionists who took part in a strike last December, which was held to protest the government plan to create a subsidiary to run a high-speed train line. The union claims the plan was a precursor to the privatization of Korail. The rail operator has described Tuesday's protest as illegal and dispatched some 1,800 replacement workers so train services are not disrupted. The Korean Confederation of Trade Unions will join the rally later in the day to protest against the Park Geun-hye administration, claiming it has not kept its promise to democratize the country's economy and improve the welfare system. Some 200,000 KCTU members also plan to walk off the job on Tuesday and participate in rallies to be held simultaneously in 12 cities nationwide, including Seoul and Busan. 손정인, Arirang News.
For your fill of Korean and international news. Join Chae Yu-sun and Mark Broom every weekday at lunchtime. NEWSLINE at noon.
Plenary session this Wednesday and vote on the government restructuring bills.
Now, when Samsung unveils a new device, the world tends to take notice, and when the Korean firm shows off its latest smartphone, that interest is piqued even further.
Well, that's exactly what Samsung has done at the Mobile World Congress, giving the public their first look at the highly anticipated Galaxy 5S. Shin Se-min has more.
Samsung Electronics has unveiled the latest model in its widely popular Galaxy range of smartphones, but not only that. Samsung's new smartwatch and fitness wristband are also taking pride of the place at the Mobile World Congress in Barcelona. The Galaxy S5, the Gear 2, and the Gear Fit are the latest offerings from Samsung and the clearest indication yet that the battleground for the smart world is shifting towards wearable devices. Equipped with a 16-megapixel camera, the Galaxy S5 comes with a larger display than its predecessor, clocking in at an impressive 5.1 inches. The ultra-saving mode has also improved the battery life. Users can now browse the internet for 10 hours on a single charge, and the download booster feature will help users download contents much faster. A new smartphone also adopts fingerprint screening, a feature that should make mobile transactions safer and easier. Not only that, users can even wash their Galaxy S5 with water, as it is not only waterproof but completely dust-resistant. Samsung also continues its push towards connected devices, as the Samsung Galaxy S5 and the Gear Fit allow users to track their heartbeat with a heart rate monitor to effectively manage its users' workouts, a first for the industry. Samsung's new devices will be launched globally in April. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
The rise of state-of-the-art technology has benefited millions worldwide, but many developing countries have been left in the dark. But
Korea's private and public sectors say they may have a solution by providing practical development support in the form of so-called appropriate technology. Paulie reports.
Here on the west coast of the Philippines, a group of Korean IT volunteers is helping to install solar panels for homes in the Ternate municipality. The goal is to help the community, which suffers from frequent blackouts, by establishing a steady supply of electricity.
For places where electricity is not very well supplied, this power generation through solar energy is not used together with the grid-connected lines. Therefore, it establishes an independent system.
However, there are other basic utilities that also lack infrastructure here. Many residents are forced to drink from contaminated springs due to the high cost of bottled water. To provide a sustainable solution, engineers from a leading Korean university have designed and donated a mechanical water purifier. The project uses no electricity and can be easily carried to other locations to provide clean water.
It's not always just a problem about the quality of water, but by utilizing this provided water purifier, we're able to resolve other problems as well.
The methods used here are based on a principle called appropriate technology, which is tailored to the social and economic needs of each geographical region.
Since this field of appropriate technology is a good fit for this area, we've decided to offer to provide these goods and services. We're also preparing to provide higher capacity products in the future.
Korea intends to further expand its appropriate technology initiative to other developing countries, with plans to build large-scale water purifiers and solar-powered generators in Cambodia. Paul Yi, Arirang News.
You can barely see the skyline in Seoul this afternoon. A thick blanket of haze and smog is hanging over the nation, partially from the high levels of ultrafine particles blowing in from China, but also from factories and vehicles right here in Korea.
And unfortunately, it won't be long before the air gets even worse with the annual arrival of yellow dust from China in the spring. Our Connie Lee has more.
It's a hazy, smoggy Tuesday in Seoul. Visibility levels are expected to be at a low of 2.5 kilometers or less across the nation this week.
I wore a mask out because I heard the fine dust particle levels are high. I can actually feel that my throat is dry and uncomfortable.
This is in part from the worsening smog in China, where fine dust levels have been at least 9 times higher than levels recommended by the World Health Organization. And according to environmental researchers in Korea, factories and vehicles in the nation are also to blame for the smog, which can cause respiratory and cardiac problems. On Monday, the Seoul city government issued a fine dust advisory around noon and asked people to stay indoors. The particulate matter level of 2.5 was high, at 92 micrograms per cubic meter for over 2 hours. The limit recommended by the Korean government is 85 micrograms per cubic meter. And it looks like these conditions will remain until the arrival of rain forecast for Thursday nationwide. But in the weeks to come, conditions could worsen as the smog could soon be joined by the annual arrival of yellow dust come March.
The conditions in the Gobi Desert and in Inner Mongolia are set to become drier in March, so the yellow dust could start coming into Korea via the northwesterly winds.
The Korea Meteorological Administration says the yellow dust levels this year will be similar to last, but instead of conditions peaking in April, the highest levels could come a month earlier. Connie Lee, Arirang News.
Ukraine will name an acting prime minister and fill the remaining seats of a unity government by Tuesday.
This comes as Russia continues to step up its rhetoric against the new leadership. Kim Min-ji reports.
Ukraine's new interim president, Alexander Turchinov, expects lawmakers to vote Tuesday on a national unity government led by a prime minister that is favored and trusted by the people. The empty seats in government will likely be filled swiftly so officials can seek economic assistance to stave off default. Turchinov says a new government will be equipped with various tasks such as stopping the country's slide and creating new jobs, as well as returning to the European integration path. He also said Ukraine is willing to build relations with Russia in a new and fair partnership. While work on the interim government is underway in Ukraine, Russia is questioning the legitimacy of the opposition and is continuing to denounce the ousting of President Viktor Yanukovych. Ukraine issued an arrest warrant for Yanukovych on Monday on charges of mass murder of citizens during protests. Russia's Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev said Ukraine's interim authorities are the result of an armed mutiny. In the meantime, the U.S. continues to pressure Russia not to intervene in Ukraine. On Monday, Washington also said it was ready to provide financial assistance to Kiev. European officials are also in talks on sending financial support to the country. Ukraine says it needs an estimated $35 billion to survive the next 2 years. Ukraine could also have a new president by the summer after the nation's parliament decided to bump up the presidential election by almost a year to the end of May. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Hello everyone, this is Kwon So-wa. Let's take a look at what else is making headlines around the world. The death toll from Sunday's car bomb explosion in Bangkok has risen to 3 after a 6-year-old girl died of her injuries on Monday. And amid this angry backdrop, the head of Thailand's army took the unusual step of urging all sides to solve their problems peacefully through talks. In a rare televised speech Monday, General Prayut Chan-o-cha said the military will not intervene, but it will deploy troops to protect civilians. He added that in the case of further loss of life, there won't be any winners or losers and the country would break down. Analysts say the chief, who has so far chosen to remain neutral, seems to be warning anti-government protesters.
Residents that used to live within a 20-kilometer radius of Japan's crippled Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant will soon be able to return home. An evacuation order that was issued soon after the 2011 nuclear disaster in the region is to be lifted by the Japanese government in April. The first 350 people will return on April 1st, and more than 30,000 people could follow in the near future. This move comes as the level of radiation contamination has lowered enough, but some still worry about existing radiation. Egypt's interim Prime Minister Hazem Beblawi said he and his government will resign from his post in a televised address Monday. He did not give a reason for the move, but according to an official, the step was to emphasize that the cabinet backs Army Chief General Abdel Fattah al-Sisi's run for president. Top military chief al-Sisi, who is very popular and has no serious rivals, is soon expected to step down from his post and declare his candidacy for president. A presidential election is expected by mid-April. The United States is seeking to cut the size of its army drastically to pre-World War II levels. The Pentagon said Monday it would eliminate popular aircraft, reduce the defense budget, and downsize the army next year to between 440,000 and 450,000 soldiers from the current 520,000, which would be the smallest size since 1940, that is. Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel said an army of the current size is unnecessary, as the U.S. is looking to shift its focus from the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq to the Asia-Pacific region. The plan still needs to be approved by Congress, however, before going into effect.
Well, thank you very much, Jisoa there for the international news. Now, a little closer to home, Korea's Culture Ministry has unveiled its mid- and long-term plans to strengthen the nation's arts and culture education in line with the president's strong emphasis on boosting culture. The ministry says it aims to expand the number of beneficiaries who can receive arts and culture education in order to include not only more of the nation's youth, but also senior citizens. It also plans to expand the number of government-sponsored weekend arts programs set up at various cultural centres across the country. Strengthened arts education for the nation's vulnerable social groups like the disabled and students residing in rural areas is another focus of the government plan.
The success of the Korean film industry has not gone unnoticed in Hollywood, with a number of movies having been remade with American audiences in mind.
Yes, and for more details on the potential of Korean films and also TV series, we are going to connect to our Hwang Jie live in Los Angeles. Jie.
Well, first of all, it's a pity I'm not able to show you the Hollywood sign because it's already too dark here in Los Angeles, but instead I'm standing in the Hollywood Boulevard where the Oscars is going to take place in just a week. And as you can see behind me, people are already preparing for the huge event. You can see the white tents over there and the Oscars banner. But just to come back to my story, Hollywood producers are constantly looking for new and original stories, and they are particularly interested in Korean films that tell stories in a un-Hollywood way, given that they take risks that studios here don't take. The publication rights of around 30 Korean films have been sold in Hollywood over the past 15 years, and some of them were remade, including classics like Old Boy, My Sassy Girl, and The Uninvited. Roy Lee, a well-known American film producer known for taking Asian films and remaking them for audiences in the United States, says he was surprised by the production values and storylines in Korean movies.
There were also original stories that I'd never seen before done in English. And so when I saw movies like My Wife is a Gangster or The Lake House, or it was called Il Mare at the time, I just thought those are movies I would want to see myself if they were in English.
The adaptations of Korean films, however, have yet to find widespread success in the U.S. market, as Americanized versions often end up being drained of the weirdness that made them so popular in Korea. And industry sources say that writers and directors of original Korean contents should also participate in the remaking process in Hollywood to increase the chances of the new version being a success.
I think they have to share their passion and also about the whole movie insight, so that they understand fully then they recreate, not remake.
And it's not just Korean films that are being eyed by Hollywood producers. Korean TV series are also getting attention. 9 have already been picked up by Fake Empire Productions, the company behind a number of hit shows like Gossip Girl and The OC.
Hollywood definitely looks to Korea as like a trendsetter in Asia, because a lot of the TV shows and movies that are popular in Korea are also popular in Japan and in China.
Roy Lee adds that as long as the Korean movie industry takes chances with new contents, it will have a marketplace worldwide. Guys?
Thanks, GA. After watching Spike Lee's version of Old Boy, though, I must say I thought the original was far, far better.
Well, maybe some Korean films are best left as they are.
Yeah.
Well, that was our Hwang Ji-ae reporting from LA on Hollywood remakes of original Korean content.
Okay, no time for weather today, unfortunately, so those are the stories we're following at this hour.
Join us again for the latest on the day's headlines on our next newscast at 2 p.m. Korea time. Join us tomorrow for NEWSLINE at noon.